Painful wisdom, day 31. Don't limit people to the first impression that you get of them. Why am I saying this? I was working on an event for the last couple of days, and a colleague I worked with, a guy who was very nice, I very much respect, asked me the question, what was the first impression you had of me? And I was like, fuck, I really don't know, to be honest. And he was like, nah, you know exactly what I'm talking about. We all have a first impression of somebody when we meet them. That's how our brains work, right? We see them, we process all these different things, all the signals they give us, and therefore our brain creates a certain image in our head within the first couple of seconds. And he is right. And still, I said, I don't really know. And he was like, no, come, just dig a little bit deeper. And after a couple of seconds of gathering my thoughts, I was like, oh, okay, so yeah. Gave like a calm impression, somebody who's not that serious, but also not that clumsy, somebody, you're gonna have a good time working with. And he was like, oh, you see, I told you so. And then I was like, okay, why the fuck was I not able to say that the first time he asked me? And that was because I noticed I used to be this kind of person. I used to judge people based on the way how they looked, based on the first kind of words they said to me when I met them, based on the way how they shake my hand. And yes, it does make sense to have an impression and kind of determine, what the rest of the person is going to look like. But in the past, that has led to me just unnecessarily destroying friendships and creating biases that did not help me to actually connect with the person and actually made my time harder. Like, even if my first impression was not good, let's say I met the colleague and then the first time I saw him, his hair wasn't good, or he was sweating because he exercised before, and I would have thought like, this guy's not really that hygienic, and working job's gonna be so shit with him because he's gonna, smell or some kind of shit like that. And then the next day, he has all well done hair and, deodorant and shit, and the bias I had before was useless. And I had these negative thoughts in my head and all the fear of, maybe, working with this guy's gonna be shit for no reason. So I've deliberately forced myself to not judge a person or not create a strong first impression of a person in the first couple of seconds. And that was confirmed when the colleague asked me to tell him the first impression I had. Like I said, I didn't really want to say it. I didn't even think about saying it. I had to dive a little bit to even understand or to even come to the conclusion what it was. I just think that there's a higher probability of ruining a relationship you have with another person than the probability of making your life easier by putting so much value or emphasis on that first impression that you have. Because he was like, okay, can you not really remember what you thought of me when you first saw me? And I was like, to make sure that that memory of you that you have of a first impression, this could be for a date or, for meeting colleagues or for, I don't know, for all different kinds of scenarios where you meet people, meeting a new friend. To have that first impression be something that you remember a couple days later, it has to be something you emphasize, that you value. And I simply didn't value it. I simply didn't care about making an opinion on somebody based on the first seconds where I see them, because I'm more of a person who says, you learn so much about a person if you just have some deep conversations with them about all these different kind of topics. And then you can come to a conclusion. But even then, it's still hard because, we all change, we all go through certain experiences. It can be that you experience some person while he's going through some shit and therefore, the experience is not, or the impression is not as good. Or you experience somebody, or you meet somebody for the first time while they're having a blast, a good day, and then the impression's good, and a couple days later, they're down, and then the more you think in your head and the more predictions you make, the more potentially disappointed you can become, assuming you make a positive prediction about the person. So yeah, I think my life has been better. I've had much better relationships with people after not just judging them by their cover, you could say. But maybe there are two ways to see this. Maybe it's not one way or the other. Maybe it's just a combination out of both. You should not judge somebody based on the first time you see them, but you should also not judge them, if that makes sense, if you get what I'm trying to say. You should maybe, get some signals, but don't ruin it for yourself. Don't make it unnecessarily difficult for yourself. Just do what's necessary to make the relationship that you have with the other person easier. That's what I would say. But yeah,